Okay, so Q&A.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I have the queue.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just wondering, I don't know exactly how to phrase this. Okay. Well, I took an ancient Greek philosophy class this past semester, and we did pre-Socratics and Plato, Aristotle. And when we were doing Aristotle, though, like all the time, I had this like great epiphany because it was the first time I had actually like done Aristotle inside.
It's not fun to read inside. Most of the time, yeah.
But I was also like, I think it's pretty fun. That's what we were doing.
Yeah, I think it's more fun than other stuff. Other stuff is really just a slog, you know. It's not like reading a Plato dialogue.
Yeah,
that's fun, but yeah.
Anyways, I was going through it, and like we were going through it in class, whenever, and like every 10 minutes, I would be like, "Oh, that's just like this idea that I have in Judaism."
Yeah.
But it kind of felt weird to me and off.
Yeah.
So the question is like, should it bother us, or why does it not bother us that so much of what our current hashkafa is, both here in this yeshiva, but I think also just Jews probably worldwide. But it's not, I don't think it's limited to the Rambam, but obviously he's a major player in this. That so much of our hashkafa is based in Aristotle, when the Torah obviously predates Aristotle. And
right.
Yeah.
All right. So that's a good question. All right. So first of all, one of my favorite quotes is from, I think it's from Alfred North Whitehead, the mathematician and philosopher, who said the Western philosophy is nothing but it's a very, very catchy quote. Hold on, let me just see if I can find it. Alfred North Whitehead, Western philosophy quote. Plato. Yeah, the safest general characterization of European philosophical tradition is that it consists of a series of footnotes to Plato. And then someone else said, and Aristotle wrote most of the footnotes. So in terms of it's definitely true that Western thinking was dominated by basically Plato and Aristotle,
Right.
And I think what's the one area that, like, I mean, obviously both of them touch on everything, but the area that Plato stayed away from, like Meshita. This is a generalization, but like he writes about this, is science. He felt that science was very speculative, and that's the area where Aristotle, like really took off. And that, I think, is why, and I think because Aristotle's philosophy casts such a long shadow, for over 1,000 years, right? Definitely over 1,000 years. Aristotle was like in the 4th century BCE, and then I don't know at what point his works were lost and then rediscovered by the Muslims and whatever, So like, definitely in terms of Western thinking, then like the perception is accurate. Okay, because that was the first thing I should say, is that a person could question your perception and say, well, maybe that's just your own thing. But I think it's fairly recognized that that's true. Okay, then in terms of Judaism, the question is, how should we feel about the fact that so much of our philosophy seems to be rooted in or reflected in Aristotle, of our approach to Judaism, So then you get to the big machlokus, okay? And the big machlokus, you can frame it between Ramban and Rambam, right? Which is, to what extent I'm going to use Hirsch's terminology, do we develop Judaism from within, and to what extent do we allow it to be influenced and shaped by influences from without, okay? So the big proponents of the anti-Rambam view, the anti-Rambam approach, are the Ramban among the Rishonim. Obviously, again, there's a lot of people there also. And then Rav Hirsch in the Achronim, and then Shadal, who's just lesser known, but he also has that. And I have a shir on Rav Hirsch's opposition to the Rambam, and I have a shir on Shadal's opposition to the Rambam. And they both stem from from this concern, which is that, like, the Rambam was bringing in external influences, and his view of Judaism was colored by the Greek wisdom tradition, the Greek philosophical tradition. So they're on board with this, and they say we should feel very disturbed by that, And then the Ramban, I think it's in his, Torah Shem Tamima, in that essay. It might be in a different essay, where I mentioned this a couple of days ago or last week that he really goes off on Aristotle and holds that Aristotle was a Russia. Okay, and I think the reason why he holds it he was a Russia has to do, I think the Ramban somehow maintained that Aristotle was like intentionally, knowingly denying hashgacha. Like he knew about Sinai and stuff like that and like denied it. It's been a while since I've seen it inside. I think that was his shita, but in practice he definitely like distanced himself from that. But the thing is that like even in the Ramban's conception of science, he couldn't help but be influenced by Aristotle because that was synonymous with science. Okay, so that's one approach.
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
Where in Hirsch? Or is that just like
it's in the 18th of the 19 letters. Okay. And there are two translations of the 19 letters. There's the older one and the newer one. The older one is more, as they say, harif. And I was advised when I was reading up on this topic, I was advised to read that one. I forgot which one I ended up using in my shir.
The one we have over there?
It's green and not red. The green is the older one. Yeah, I think it's the one we have there. It must be because I think that's where the only place I've seen it. I was gonna say one more point on that also, which is that so then the other view is really championed. Another person, by the way, no, forget it. The Rambam's view really would be kabel ha'emes misha amro, accept the truth from whoever says it. Not that the Rambam would disagree with that, but that's really what allows the Rambam. That characterizes the Rambam's approach to knowledge, such that it doesn't matter whether like the Rambam says in Hilchos קידוש החודש. See, I knew I'd have the Rambam open. This is just one of those gems because who among us learns Hilchos קידוsh החודש? Not us.
We said about maybe learning it, and then we realized it's of math and
that's mostly what it is. So he says at the end of chapter 17, this is 1724. Oh, thank you. 1724. So after he does all the chapters and chapters of calculations, V'tam kol elu ha'hashbonos, so how we do these calculations and why we add this number and why we subtract that number and how we know each and everything from all these principles of haraya al and all the proofs. He chachmas hatikubas of gematria. That is the chachma of astronomy and math. Here, gematria means math. Shechibru ba chachmei Yavan Sfarim Rabim, that the Greek chachamim composed many books. V'heimam tsuyim achshav b'yad chachamim. Those are the books that we have now among the chachamim. V'al Sfarim shechibru chachmei Yisrael shay b'mei neviim mi b'nei Yisachar. The books that were composed by the Chachmei Yisrael in the times of the Nevi'im from the tribe of Yisachar, well, I guess that was they specialized in this. Lo higiu elinu, they did not reach us. Since all of these principles are established with clear proofs, which have no doubt, and it's impossible for a person to be critical of them. We don't care about the author. Doesn't matter whether the Nevi'im wrote them or whether Goyim wrote them. Anything whose reasoning is manifest and whose truth is known through proofs that are without a reasonable doubt. We are not relying on the person who said it, or who taught it. Rather, we are relying on the proof that is manifest and on the reason that is known. So everyone quotes Kabbalah Amro, but people don't quote this enough. So I got to give this some more press time. So that's really how the Rambam relates to Aristotle. And since Aristotle wrote on so many fundamental topics, then and that it was not, I think people were not aware until Galileo and afterwards of like the rapid evolution of science and how quickly scientific theories are overturned, because Aristotle's theories held sway for thousands of years. So in the same way that, for example, like we treat it, I mean, I guess this is kind of questioned in quantum, but like cause and effect, we view as not a theory, but that's like the basis of everything. Like the fact that the universe operates through cause and effect, but that's in my mind how they relate it to Aristotelian physics, that's just what reality is. And then, he has certain theories about stuff like the origin of the universe, So Rambam was coming from that angle. And because Aristotle was the most sophisticated, had the most sophisticated like theories of how to conceive of the world, the Rambam used that language as well, So going back to your question, the question is now that so I think back then, it would have been much clearer to me, at least, to say obviously we go with the Rambam in the sense that like we're not going to shut off our minds to what we know scientifically. I think the real question now is so much of the metaphysics of the Rishonim in Hashgacha and Nevuah and epistemology is tied up in Aristotelian concepts, which we now know are outdated. So the question is, what of those concepts was Aristotle touching upon a truth that can, so to speak, be salvaged and just updated in modern terms? And then what things are totally like debunked? And how do we make a new metaphysics based on our current model? And that's a question that we don't really have good answers to. And that's, again, if whoever has not listened to Rabbi Track and Shirim from 3 Sundays ago, you have to listen to that, because that's like he talks about that there also. So the question is, how do we feel? We feel in conflict, because now we look back and we see that what looked like, what to them would have looked like just like we talk about gravity, and we don't say, oh, you're tainting Torah with Newtonian theories, we say like, and outdated theories too, right? Back then, like it would have, that's just what the world, that's how we understood the world. Now it's unclear, what was influence for the bad, So, yeah.
Can I ask a related follow-up question?
Yeah.
Would the Rambam say that like Moshe and the Nevi'im and all these people were like pre-Aristotle Aristotelians?
It's a good question what the Rambam would say. I honestly don't know, because the line, we have to remember, you know this from the course, I'm sure, but the line between science and philosophy was much blurrier back then. And I think it's very easy to say that philosophical truths were accessible to the pre-Socratics, right? Like the Avos, but to say that they had access to Aristotelian concepts or even Socratic concepts is much more difficult to say that. And it's much more difficult for us to say that. I don't know what the Rambam would say though, I really don't know.
I could foresee him saying that was true when Aristotle said in. They held the truth.
Right.
So that's what they were held.
Right. Yeah, right.
But personally, I find that very hard.
I find it very hard to accept also. Yeah, I think, again, we are much more aware of anachronisms than they were back then. Just 2 other resources to direct you to is, one is Rabbi Dr. Joshua Berman's Ani Maamin, which deals with a lot of these issues. Very good. Yeah, I didn't realize that I hadn't finished it. It's really 2 books in one, so you can view it that way. The first half of the book is about these types of questions and archaeology and like that kind of stuff. And then the second half of the book, well, also these questions. The second half of the book is about the Yud Gimel Ikarim, and specifically Torah Min HaShamayim. And it's really like 2 books stapled together. Very, very good book. And I also gave 2 shirim on that. And then the other shir that I gave in 2021 is schools of Jewish thought. When I talk about the 3 schools of Jewish thought, 3.5 schools of Jewish thought of the rationalist, the traditionalist, and the blind faith school of thought. That I think will articulate like how the different. No, it was a Hashgacha shir. Yeah. If you remind me, I can post it in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a much bigger. I mean, I don't. It's a much bigger question. I'm just giving you like a Q&A sized answer. Sure. The answer is we should feel in conflict about it. And not to the point where we reject it, but we're suspect, and we have to sort stuff out.
Can I also just say that to me, the biggest thing was the very idea that like man was created for a specific purpose, and that purpose is to enact rationality. Yeah. And like to be the most perfected rational animal. Like that's Aristotelian. That's Aristotle. Right. So that's like the backbone of what I feel like.
But that's a good example of how that's a thing that is entirely possible without any stretch of like credulity. It's entirely possible that like someone before Aristotle had that theory, and that's the idea of Torah. So like
I think like, did Moshe hold that?
Right. That's the question. So let me give you another analogy. Also, I had a long discussion at the Lifters 2 Shabbos ago with the Weisses about this exact topic, but it was shifted to talking about the Ikarim, and we could talk about that also after you read Berman's book. But Aristotle invented logic, right? Okay. No one had tried to systematize human thinking before Aristotle. Now, does that mean that people did not think logically before Aristotle? Of course not. They thought logically, but they didn't have the categories and terms. There was no science of logic, okay? Similarly, Rabbi Zimmer's shir was the Rambam of Brisker, right? The answer, according to Rabbi Zimmer, according to me, the answer is no. Rambam was not a brisker. Neither were any of the Rishonim. Okay, does that mean that they did not? And they did not use the brisker derech? Rav Chaim Soloveitchik invented the brisker derech. Does that mean that they did not think categorically or conceptually? Of course not. They did, but Rav Chaim Soloveitchik innovated the science of halakha and the terminology of halakha. So too, Aristotle, system. There was no such thing as, according to my understanding, there was no such thing as subject matter before Aristotle. Biology, chemistry, zoology, there was no such thing as subjects. Aristotle invented subjects. Does that mean that knowledge, so to a certain extent, the categories that Aristotle innovated that we use are going to color our view of certain ideas, but at the same time, the things that Aristotle was categorizing, many of them were accessible to people before Aristotle, and certainly to Chacham Yisrael and the Torah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good question. There's also another book.
Yeah.
This is a toughie. Okay, this is what made me stop writing book reviews because I couldn't write a book review on it. Strauss, Spinoza, and Sinai. It's a collection of essays. The title is a horrible title. Okay, like you would look at that and you'd be like, eh?
I like the title. Sounds cool.
Okay, fine. So it is a series of essays that are basically okay. There are a lot of kiruv type arguments for Orthodox Judaism that are pitched to non-religious Jews who are not philosophers. Okay, this book is pitching the lifestyle and belief system of Orthodox Judaism to secular philosophers. Okay, and it's written by essays written by people who are qualified in various areas of philosophy and Torah, tackling different elements of that question. Okay, and in it, there's this one interesting essay that I can't remember if I like the conclusions, but I like the questions. Is what he did was he said, we hold that there are 4 exiles, right? What are they? After Egypt, yeah.
I'm gonna mess up the order, but Persian.
That's the second one.
Okay, so Babylonian.
Yeah, Bavel is the first one.
Bavel, Persian.
Prasamada is the second one.
Greece
and
Roman.
Roman. Okay, right. So what this essay did, is it looked at, in the same way as we know a lot about Greek thinking, right? And so it is not far-fetched to say that the way that we think about things and started thinking about things during the Greek exile was influenced by Greek thinking. So what this attempts to do is attempts to identify what Judaism's philosophy, how it would have been approached through Persian thinking and through Babylonian thinking,
So cool.
And then through Roman thinking, which is characterized in the modern day, And I don't remember how much of the author's claim was that this is reality or how much he was just using it as like a platform for like exploring certain ideas. But it was definitely a cool notion. Another person to look at, which is, I'm not going to refer to a specific book, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, people talk about Athens and Greece and Jerusalem, right? Like basically like the most pivotal influences on humanity have been, Jerusalem, which is like the Bible and, Judaism and Christianity, and then Athens, which is Greek philosophy. So Rabbi Sachs holds the 3 influences are Jerusalem, Athens, and Gettysburg. And by Gettysburg, he means that the United States of America was the first nation to successfully translate certain ideals of like human liberty and human dignity into a political system. And so he writes a lot about this subject. The Great Partnership, I think, is the book. The Great Partnership. I think that's the book where he deals with the interaction between Greek thinking and Jewish thinking. I have not finished the book, and I remember when I read it, at the time, I did disagree with many things, but I found it really thought-provoking, and there's a lot of good ideas there. And like even the things I disagree with, I made me realize like I can't defend my position. I just like feel that this is wrong, and like it really made me like think about my own ideas. So you have your winter break reading cut out for you. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a big topic. It's a big topic. Okay. Good question. Yeah.
Well, so can you post the list of the things that you just recommended.
I can try to remember. Yeah.
I have like
Okay,
a
yeah.
couple of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll try to do it in the show notes. That would be a good idea.
Yeah. Also, completely different question.
Yeah.
What's the right way to think about learning that you're gonna miss out on? That you're just not gonna be able to think of. Like, really let's say it's a little different now because you maybe could listen to a recording, but let's just say that realistically you're not gonna listen to the recording for this year.
Right.
Like I'm missing morning Seder every day.
Right.
And I'm not gonna, there's no way I'm gonna be listening to all those recordings.
Yeah, I was thinking about you and thinking about that yesterday on my way home. I was literally thinking to myself, I wonder if Isaac has that feeling compared to 2020 and 2021, because like from the time when you can be in every shir in yeshiva to the time when you can't, and then there's a lot of recordings. Yeah. So let me just.
Yeah, I definitely do.
Yeah.
I know there's more real type of recordings people be manna.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to think about that.
Right. So I did a podcast on and I'm just trying to see if I have the quote here. Okay, I highly recommend for you specifically, but for every human being, 4,000 Weeks Time Management for Mortals. And everyone who I've been recommending this to everybody, and everyone who's read it has texted me or emailed me in the middle of reading it and be like, I'm so glad you recommended this book. This is exactly what I needed to hear because my life, I didn't realize how my life was out of control. But hold on here. Okay, so I might have quoted this from the book itself, not from, I don't think I have the quote here. Yeah, so he talked, so we know the feeling. Okay, so first of all, the first step is to realize that you're chasing a fantasy, right? That there are infinite numbers of shirim and you can't listen to them all. And I think I actually did make this point on one of the Stoic podcasts of in the same way that it is irrational for you to say, oh man, I wish I could have, I feel bad that I wasn't alive in the time of the Rambam and could go to one of his shirim. Or I feel bad that I wasn't in the time of Shlomo Melech and I could go to one of his shirim. Because you realize that's impossible, right? So too, that same degree of impossibility should extend to the category of all shirim that are going on, right? It's just impossible. Right? Now I know that doesn't help, but that's the framework, okay? But the other thing that Oliver Burke talks about in that book is we know the phrase FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. So he says that I don't know if he coined the term or if he just uses it, JOMO, the joy of missing out, which is the learning to lean into the fact that you have a limited number of options and decisions available to you, and that is what life consists of making those choices that cut you off from other possibilities so that you can do the thing that you've chosen has more value, and the thing is that sometimes it's not going to be a matter of more value, it's going to be a matter of there's equal or potentially greater value, but you have to make the choice. And learning to embrace the fact that he says it so much better than I'm saying it, that this is what life consists of, that life, life is making these decisions of what to do with your limited time. The answer is read the book. Let me think if I can come up with another, with my own answer, because his answer has been looming so large in my mind since I've read that book that I can't not make recourse to it, but I wish I could quote it.
I think at least the actually keep pausing for a minute.
Yeah, and I also have to search for something. So I was saying that there's two separate questions here. One is, how do you make choices within the things that are good involvements that you could do when you know that you're going to have to you can't do all of them? And the other is, how do you cope with the fact that you have to do a lot of stuff that is just not of ultimate importance? So I'm going to quote one of my favorite psukim in Mishlei that I quoted at David Federer's talk. So this is Mishlei 14:4. Be'ein alafim evus bar v'rav tvuos b'koach shor. Where there are no oxen, I think Avus is either the trough or the barn. I think there's two different opinions there. So without any oxen, the barn is clean, but many crops come through the power of an ox. Okay, so you know what? I have a PowerPoint on this. Hold on. I must, because this was one of the ones that I used to teach in Shavit. Okay, let's see. That's an old PowerPoint. Hold on. Okay, this will have to do. I don't know if this is the right one. There's diagrams. That's why I want to go to the PowerPoint.
This is a 12-year-old PowerPoint.
That's crazy.
But they did.
Oh no, this is not the right one. Hold on. I do have to find this because the diagrams help.
It's almost as old as Mishlei.
What? Almost. Let's get in there.
It's something that one of your students would say, like 12 years. That's basically like, it's like an eternity. Okay, this would be in 2020 in the fall semester of Nach 11. Oh no, sorry, in the spring semester. Oh no, this is COVID year. 14. Wait, did I say 14.4?
Yeah.
Oh. Hold on. Sorry about this. If this weren't going to clarify things so much, then I would forego it. Ah, there we go. Oh no, that was a Word document. But that means I must have taught it here. 14.
Maybe last year, not definitely not the year before.
There it is, I think. That
So it's always like this. You find everything but the thing that you're actually.
I know.
It's the rule.
So slow. Oh, that actually is going to be an example of a puzzle. Ah, there we go. All right, this is it. Okay. Yeah. Okay, here we go. All right, so okay, so you have means and you have ends. Okay. Oh, sorry. So the question is, what's the idea? Okay. Right? Yeah. Right. Because it's obvious, right? Okay. So the thing is you have means and you have ends. Okay. And we all know that you have to do the means in order to get the end. Okay. Right. Okay. You have to do the means to get the end. Okay. But what this pasuk is about is, oh, sorry. So hold on a second. So we know that you have to use an ox to plow in order to get the many crops. Okay. But there's something else, which is the means, the ends, and then there's the annoying the annoying byproducts of the means. Okay, so for example, the what that is these responsibilities and consequences which are necessitated by the means but don't directly produce the ends. So in the case of the ox, there's using the ox to plow, and then there's the many crops. But then there's the fact that you have to feed the ox. There's the fact that what we call Ox-Filth, which became our slang term for for this phenomenon. I have to put up with so much Ox-Filth, which is yeah. So cleaning up after the oxen, taking the oxen to get their medical care or whatever, bringing them in when it's cold. So none of those actions produce crops. The only thing that produces crops is using an ox to plow. However, the idea of the pasuk is you cannot have the ox without the annoying byproducts of the ox. Okay, so here are some examples. So let's say with teaching, there's preparing lessons and then there's the teaching. Okay, so the means and then the end. So I happen to, for the most part, except certain classes that I've taught, enjoy preparing the lessons, and then I enjoy the teaching. But as a high school teacher, I also had to deal with angry parents, grading, proctoring, faculty meetings. There's all of these annoying byproducts, and there's a fantasy that I could have the means without the annoying byproducts of the means, right? But that's just a fantasy. There's no such thing as being a full-time high school teacher without these means. There's no such thing as using an ox to generate crops without having to clean up after the ox. Okay, like here's another one. Making good food is a means to eating good food, right?
Delicious.
Yeah. But there's the grocery shopping, there's the planning, there's the ingredient prep, there's the cleanup. Those are all annoying byproducts of that. And again, unless you can afford it, then you can't do those things, or unless you have like other people, like a team or whatever, then you can't do those things without that. What was that? Okay, yeah. So I think
technology, and there's
exactly
intermittent
technological difficulties. Yeah, exactly, right. So why is this still displaying here? Oh, yeah. So
Do you taught this to your high school class?
yeah. So so the answer to your second question is that like there is a reality to, you have to put up with Ox-Filth, right? And part of Ox-Filth is, so you have to work in order to okay, you need money in order to learn, right? So you could view work as an Ox-Filth of like the making money, or you could just say the job itself, is the plowing, and then the Ox-Filth is all the annoying aspects of the job that you have to deal with, and I know it sounds like I'm just saying like accept reality, but I like many Mishnaic ideas, the more particulars you see this in, the more you realize that for me to like wish to have an ox that doesn't like produce filth is just a total fantasy. And like the sooner I can come to terms with that, then the less suffering I'm going to put myself through with this. That's an answer to your second question. It's not an answer to your first question. I got to think about that some more.
The means to the means.
The means to the means. Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Okay. Next question. But again, it's helpful to just have the category of ox, like labeling things, naming them can help you to deal with them. Like, oh, this is just Ox-Filth,
I have
Yeah.
another question that's related but different.
Okay, let's go.
I
Yeah,
have a question. Okay.
yeah.
So I've been meaning to read through Mishneh Torah for a while.
Welcome to the club.
And I feel like one of the things I keep running into is like Hebrew.
Okay.
So like I've been thinking to myself recently, like maybe I should start reading it in English.
Yeah.
So like I thought the question in my mind to you, and then you were like, well, of course. Like if you're not gonna read the Hebrew, then of course.
Yeah.
So I guess based on if that premise is correct,
Yeah.
what would be a good English translation of Mishneh Torah that I could just sit down and like?
There's only one translation.
Oh.
Yeah, there's only one translation that is like available. It's the Talgar one, which is
Okay.
the one we have here, but it's also available on Chabad.org for free. The advantage of it is it has good footnotes, and the disadvantage is that he sometimes. Oh, the other advantage of it is that even most time he uses the good versions of the Rambam. He doesn't rely on the Doofus, but even when he relies on the Doofus, he'll quote Kafech and the good editions in the footnotes and like highlight the discrepancies. But the bad news is he sometimes plays fast and loose with the translations, especially, and I'll say it, especially when Chabad Hashkafa is serviced by a certain translation. Then he'll translate it in a way that like is not exactly faithful to the Rambam, but like reads Chabad philosophy into the Rambam. Okay, because he's a Chabad, So I would say that, and what I would say is, yeah, definitely no shame in, for bekius purposes, reading it in English, and I would say though that if it happens to be a halacha that makes you go, like, or you are like really, then check out the Hebrew and like use that as like your checkpoint. And I'll also say this is not about your question, because the Rambam did write the Mishneh Torah in
Judeo-Arabic?
no, in Hebrew.
Oh.
He wrote the Mishneh Torah in Hebrew.
That's the only thing you wrote.
You didn't know that? Yeah, it's the only thing he wrote in
I
Hebrew.
definitely do that.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
He's talking
Yeah.
about why he wrote in Hebrew
In the Sefer Mitzvos, in the Hakdamah Sefer Mitzvos, and in the Hakdamah of the Mishneh Torah. Yeah. It's the only thing he wrote in Hebrew, other than a couple of letters that he wrote. I think Mamar Tchias Mason might also be in Hebrew. I don't know. So, but what I'm about to say pertains to, there's certain, I face this a lot with teachers who would be against teaching, like giving English translations of things, So I understand if our goal is to train high school students to have independent skills, then it's a crutch to just use English translations. The reality is that a lot of people are not going to be lamdanim, especially when I was teaching in a girls' school, where they're going to go to seminary for a year or two, and then they're never going to learn in a keva way again, many of them. So my argument to those teachers would be, think of how all the Spanish Rishonim wrote in Judeo-Arabic, because that was the language people spoke, and they wrote their, so for us to write or teach in English is no different than them teaching in Judeo-Arabic,
The Gemara is in Aramaic.
The Gemara is in Aramaic. Yeah, that's a good point, right? So obviously, it is l'chatchila. Then you should learn it in the language it was written in. But like there's no shame in learning in a non-Hebrew language, especially if you're not going to learn that otherwise. Yeah. Mishneh Torah, halavai, not halavai. Imir Hashem. No, I was yeah. You will learn through it in its entirety in Hebrew one day.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like this is gonna be your only exposure to it. Yeah. Halvai should be today. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
We're going to do that together.
Probably, I think, no,
Yeah, I think it lends itself to like in yeah. Okay. You have any questions, because you're the one who hasn't asked, so you get first crack at it before we go back to Isaac.
That's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Isaac.
Okay. Yeah. So related question.
Yeah.
What was my question? I don't remember actually.
Okay. Dumia Sheila.
Ooh.
Yeah. That sounded like a good
It is.
nugget.
I can't. I don't. Did I ask for press on this? I don't remember. I may have asked for press on this, but I'll ask it anyway. Okay. I think I did ask for press on this. I had an argument with someone like not too long ago. Based and I was like explaining to them my understanding of like Zalman Elohim.
Yeah.
Based on yeshivas, like I think.
Free will?
No. Like Zalman Elohim.
Like it's free will.
No, not free will. No.
The human, I guess, how we're in the.
Here's what you're gonna say. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. No. What do you mean?
oh,
By
but
Zalman
like
Elohim.
meaning like as in like we're born with a potential, and then that potential like can become actualized, and like
For what though?
for knowledge and
Yeah, knowledge.
and thereby for call it eternal existence.
Right. Yeah. Pause for 1 second. I
I thought
don't.
Zalman Elohim was free will.
No. And I have or had a document that I think if you go through all.
You say this.
No, never.
It might be the means.
Yeah. Free will is a byproduct, annoying byproduct. If I could tell you. Yeah. But I think if you look through all the Rishonim, then they say Zalman Elohim is the part of you that has chachma, understanding, can have knowledge of the truth, knowledge, yediyah. The closest thing you might have recently heard me say is that Sforno learns that Demus Elohim, is Demus is free will, but not Zalman Elohim. Yeah. But anyway.
So the argument ended up like I thought this was a pleasure thing, and I think Rapasan told me it is. I think I asked it in a Q&A. I did, but I'll ask it anyway here. So then I said, according to he's like, what? So babies don't have a Zalman Elohim, and I was like, correct. And because like the way I've seen it is like they have like a potential, and then like it can be actualized like later in life.
Yeah.
And so he was like, oh, interesting. So he was like, what? So babies that die don't go to Olam Haba, and I was like, correct.
Right.
And then I just want to know if that's like.
Oh, so was he saying that babies do
He
Olam
was
Haba?
saying like God's not just then, like and he like.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, that's interesting. I mean, I don't understand how babies can go to Olam Haba. I mean,
okay, so I couldn't either. So like,
yeah.
I was trying to explain that,
Yeah.
or whatever, but like, okay.
So I dealt with this in. Okay. Again, I mean, so yeah. So this gets even worse. So every year that goes by, I understand less and less what the soul is. Okay. Especially given the whole Aristotle thing.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I know I have one because I'm using it right now, but I don't know what it is, So this is.
How do you know you're using it right now?
Well, I'm using something, and that something corresponds to what the Torah talks about. The features of the thing I'm using correlate to the features that in our Masorah are talked about in relation to the soul. But what it is, I just don't know what it is, like how it works. So in 2000, this is I'm dating this 2015. Okay, I wrote this in 2015. Do babies have souls according to Ibn Ezra? So, okay, so I pose this as a multiple choice question. Either yes, no, maybe, or potentially. Okay, so according to my understanding of the Ibn Ezra, the answer is potentially, and this is from Tehillim 8:3, which is so there's a pasuk in 8:3 that says, "Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings you have established strength." So because of your enemies to silence foe and avenger, and then it goes into when I behold your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you set in place. I think, what is frail man that you should remember him, and the son of mortal man that you should be mindful of him. Okay, so so Ibn Ezra says. He says, in my opinion, scripture reads out of the mouth of babes because man is the most glorious being created in this world. Out of the mouth of babes refers to the time that a child first begins to speak. Its meaning is that the power of the rational soul first appears in the body when the child begins to speak. The rational soul develops to the point where it can learn of the power of its creator by logical thinking. Indeed, the soul grows in strength day by day. This is the meaning of hast thou founded strength. Okay, so my understanding of the Ibn Ezra is that well, actually, this is the Onkelos, right? Is that Onkelos translates it as man became a ruach mamal, a speaking spirit, right? And speech and rationality are hand in hand. So my understanding of Ibn Ezra is the rational soul first comes online when you begin to speak, okay? And before that, it's pure potential. So you could make the argument that that maybe, again, I don't know anything about what I'm saying, that a baby that once it starts being able to speak, whenever that is, that's when it first has a soul. Now the question is that what is eternal, or is it the knowledge that's eternal?
Right.
You know,
I'm under the impression that knowledge is what's eternal.
Right, correct. Yeah.
And then just on like,
oh, you know who you should talk about this with is Rabbi Trachman.
Okay.
He is the I won't say obviously like Rebbe and Rapesach are holding in these areas, but like in terms of thinking about these things and being willing to get into the length of discussion that you want to get into, and having knowledge of science and philosophy, I can think of no one better than Rabbi Trachman. And in fact, I just learned that like Rabbi Trachman has like a regular chavrusa in like some guy who's like involved in like cutting edge AI stuff. So like he's also approaching from the context of like AI and like modern theories of intelligence. Talk to him about that. But yeah.
Okay. Just on the point that the Ibn Ezra was making of the rational soul develops, but
Yeah.
the child lives. Does that doesn't mean to say like the Yetzer Tov.
So yeah. So yeah, it's a good question. Right.
Whenever we see all the time. The Yetzer Hara is like 13 years
Right.
and all that.
Yeah, so it's a good question. That's another thing I don't understand, which is what's the relationship between the Tzelem Elokim? Here's all the things I don't understand. No, the Tzelem Elokim, the Yetzer Tov, the part of you that is eternal, the rational faculty, the intellect, and the brain. I don't understand. We speak of these things as being interrelated, but I don't know what the relationship is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, but I am under the impression that let's just say for hypothetical purposes, a 1-year-old baby, not 1-year-old, sorry, a 1-day-old baby is no different than an animal except in potential. So I don't see the mechanism by which a 1-day-old baby can get Olam Haba.
So it was like a 31-day-old baby also.
I don't know when babies develop. You know,
I'm just saying it's like it was like an eighth.
Right, yeah.
No. 40 days Yatza Vlad, like before like the baby comes out.
You're saying in terms of like when you put it on
Ben,
right?
Like,
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that I don't know if that corresponds to. Yeah, I don't really know. Yeah. Okay, good question though.
Yeah.
All right, good Q&A. Thanks for coming. Okay.
Yeah, we need to ask that question for a while.
Yeah.